Hey, what is up, everyone? This is Jake Hofer with Exeter Trail Cameras. Today, we have a brand new video version of our podcast, Trail Cam Radio. It is with Johnny Stewart. Johnny is from Pennsylvania, but has traveled all across the country to hunt whitetails and has a ton of experience, and we were lucky enough to sit down with him and cover a wide variety of topics, and I think you guys will really enjoy it. If you do, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and let's get into the podcast.
Lights, camera,
follow the trail.
ready to shoot.
If you know where a deer's bedding and you know where he's eating, that deer should be dead.
If you're passive on a deer, what you're doing is you're teaching them.
I've got 30 bucks in the Michigan record book. Everyone but one has had at least one previous wound on his body. Some had as many as 4.
Trail Cam Radio from the guys at Exodus.
All right, we are live at the Great American Outdoor Show, Airbnb. We're in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. This is, I don't know what, third or fourth podcast we recorded, or guest.
This is podcast number 7 in 3 days, but probably the third or fourth guest, yeah.
Got it. We have the Johnny Stewart.
Yeah, there you go.
With us here on the podcast. You've been a pretty requested guest, honestly, from people out east, specifically Pennsylvania. Greg Litzinger said we got to link up, and here we are. We tracked you down. And
yeah, that's good. Thanks, Jake. Yeah, I've done a lot of public land hunting probably the last 8 years, but I grew up hunting a little bit of public, but also in my area, Southwest PA, it's kind of like public land, and it is just what I'm saying there is that a lot of pressure, small deer, maybe a big one's 120, but as I evolved, I did shoot, better deer, and I did hunt a little bit of private, but I didn't keep going and looking for private land. I was looking for that challenge to put me back to when I was like 12, 14, and just seeing 120 or harvesting, a yearling 2-year-old. So I'm trying to get back to that. I'm trying to rewind because, I've got to a point in my career as far as hunting to where I did hunt some private land, maybe in my 20s and that, and, harvest some deer. And I felt like if I kept going that route, hunting private land, I put myself in a category with people that manage land and private land. So I make it black and white, and I wanted to gravitate toward the public land because I guess I'm just trying to challenge myself. I'm looking for that challenge to where if I hunted private land, I would be maybe my challenge would be going 150, 180, 200. I don't know. I just feel like it's the ultimate challenge. If you're a whitetail hunter and you're looking for an ultimate challenge, you're going to go hunt public land because the biggest thing is not the deer sign, but the unknown variable, which is the hunting pressure. Anybody can read sign, oh, that's a big rub, that's a big scrape. Oh, I'm going to get in there. Well, if you're on private land and not really much pressure, then chances are you can probably get that deer because the sign's going to talk to you. But if you're hunting public land, that is, you don't know the variable, the unknown variable, the people that are hunting there, and that deer might be nocturnal. So there's a whole other element to hunting public land, and it's that much tougher. I've been on public land to where, okay, there's a fence row. If I can only go across that fence, onto the private land, I'd kill this deer. It'd be that much easier. But then going into that private land, I should, to me, in my head, I should be shooting 170, 180 every year. But I'm trying to get back to when I was 12, 14. You get the shakes, you see that deer. So I have, in the last 8 years, did a lot of public land. And a lot of experiences traveling. I would only work, through the summer. And I hunted, traveled, probably 4, 5, 6 different states a year. And so, yeah, I have a lot of experience. And but it's mainly, I enjoy it. So
something that my ears always perk up when people travel to different states and many different types of hunting terrain and that find success in all of those areas. My ears tend to perk up a little bit quicker than someone that's, I guess, kind of one-dimensional in that sense.
Yeah.
Is your area code for your phone number 814?
No, 412.
Okay, 412. If it was 814, I'm from Illinois, and like I bet I have more 814 numbers in my phone than almost my hometown area. I didn't know if you were in that area code as well, though.
But yeah, that I hunt up in that northern part because there is so much public land there, and like Chad and I talked about earlier, smaller portions of public land you can't fully. And we also talked about hunting one animal and getting to know that animal, but with a smaller portion of land, he's not just living solely on a public land, he's living on a lot of private land, and you can't go after him, you can't learn his whole area that he lives in, where these bigger tracts that we tend to gravitate to, we can actually follow that deer through his whole life and hunt him. But that's another thing I got into, is hunting an individual deer, because deer have their own personalities like humans. And I say it all the time, yeah, everybody eats at McDonald's. Not everybody, maybe I don't or you don't. So if you're hunting a human, you don't want to, if you're going to hunt me, you're not going to get me at McDonald's. Now, a deer would be the same way, is that if this deer might feed here, he might bed here, or this other deer does this and that. So hunting an individual deer puts another element to it too. You're not just looking at the sign, and just hunting the pressure. You find that individual that lives there, and you track him, and you get to know him. And then on the bigger chunks of public land, which lately that's what I hunt, to where I can follow that one individual throughout his whole home range and get to really know him. Like a buddy of mine told me, a couple of years ago, he said, yeah, Johnny, he gets to know his deer before he kills them. He knows them, like you would know your buddy or something. But, and I think about them like he was right. I do. I maybe find their shed, find their bed, have trail cam pictures, and follow them. Maybe it might be years, but I really enjoy that. And like with the other hunters being there, that also helps you find where the deer are going to be, because they're going to gravitate to places that the hunters aren't. But I mean, I could talk all day about it. And a lot of the knowledge I have is from the experiences I've had over the last 20 years, and to put me where I am today. And but it's just, yeah, I just could go on and on, Jake. About you pop a topic up. Okay, let's talk about it. Public land. Here's what I learned. Here's my experiences, and pretty much everything you learn is from other people's experiences. When I grew up, I read tons of articles, magazine articles. I wanted to know. I thought deer hunting was black and white. This guy's going to teach me, how to kill a deer. All I need to do is read all these articles, and I'm going to go out and shoot one. I would read articles, I'd subscribe, and I'd take notes, and I had this journal, and I thought it was like black and white. And then I would go out and apply it to my areas that I hunted. Like I said, it wasn't public land, but it was the area I grew up was really pressured, and the deer were skittish and small, because they didn't survive past 2 years old. And if they did, they were really intelligent. So I applied these techniques, and it was like, man, how come I'm not having success, And then I kind of quit reading articles as I got older, and I learned from the animal itself, because there wasn't much written on the animal that I was hunting, the area, the public land. And I even talked to a guy today at the show. I said, yeah, I don't really listen to any podcasts. He said, what do you mean? I said, I haven't. I know when I was young, I read articles, and then I got away from that, and I just learned from the animal. I spent so much time in the woods, and I ask myself questions, and I study all these maps to where I will even close my eyes, and I'll visualize that onyx map, this ravine, and it's like I'm obsessed with it, But yeah, I got away from learning from other people, because most of the hunting I'm doing, to me, at that time wasn't much written on it. So I just learned. I taught myself, but the deer taught me. And you almost become the deer, and you almost, as you're moving through the ground scouting, you see does, you see bucks, and you put that, it's like etched in your memory. And just like another deer would walk through there, okay, you're going to look for a doe. Here's doe bedding here. And then you study the maps, and it might take you 5 years to learn it, maybe a 2 square mile area, public land, but you learn it to the point where you're almost like the animal itself living there, and you know where the water, the food, where the bedding is, and then you just hunt accordingly pretty much. And every scenario, it's like a set of deer antlers. No two are alike. Every scenario, like I've done podcasts where there's, and I try to give analogies to where people can relate to, because I don't want to give you that black and white. Okay, here's the trail. Here you got to find where he's bedding. Here's where he's feeding. That's where you set up. But it's not that. It's not black and white. It's a gray area, and every scenario is different. Like my analogy would be a set of deer horns. Everyone's different. So you hunt this area, I can only give you scenarios and experiences that maybe you can relate to and use in your situation, but you guarantee your situation is different to mine. That's why I try to use a lot of analogies so people can relate to, kind of get the feel of how to apply it, what I'm talking about to their area. But
there's one thing, in my opinion, that take the piece that you're hunting away, but when you start comparing hunters, I feel like there's one thing that separates the killers, the guys that are killing deer consistently, versus guys that are struggling to do that consistently. Maybe they're killing deer every few years or whatnot, and that is something that I picked up very fast that you have, and that's and you've just laid this out. You just explained this but having the cognitive ability to break down what I call situational hunting, because there's so many people that want that shoebox answer or that black and white answer, and it
doesn't exist.
It doesn't. You have to go at it and be able to think on your feet what is happening, being able to scout, read sign, however you want to describe that, and be able to put that to work. Mm-hmm. And in today's age, we're very fortunate that, as a whitetail deer hunter, I don't know that there's a better era to live in. I mean, there's big deer in a lot of areas, and there's educational and informative content pretty much at your fingertips, anywhere
right.
you want to look. But you still need to be able to use your mind in the field, and you can recall on some of the stuff that you're seeing on YouTube or listening to on podcasts, but if you're not able to put that to work for you in those situational hunting, or in those situations, like, it's not doing you any good. So I guess you mentioned you were going through and consuming content through written publications, but I guess at like how many years or at what point did you realize? I mean, you said this, that you realized this stuff wasn't working in the areas that you were hunting on the deer but how long did it take you for that to click?
I think, I started articles and reading when I was 12, 14, 15, and I killed my first deer when I was 16. I still killed it on that trail. I found that heavy trail going to the field, the food source at night. I'm just like sat there. But after that, 18, 20, I started getting away from them articles to where I would find, I killed a big deer when I was 21, 22. Everybody in the area knew about it, and that was before, Google Maps and all that. And I just went in, I walked every inch of the land, like I gridded the whole area till I knew, and it was like August, September, right when he started shedding, I'm going to go find rubs. Okay, find those rubs. And then the picture of trails disappeared in my head. I wanted to, learn by just visually seeing sign in the woods to where the deer might be bedding, seeing the scat, seeing the beds, cover, and then I would just set up accordingly, and I harvested that deer, and then the following year it was just kind of, I'd let the deer, I seen a deer crossing the road in the morning. I said, okay, he was coming out of that field, it was right, and I got down and I just found cover. I didn't look for that trail. And I said, he's going to try, and I shot that deer, and then it just was kind of a snowball effect that I started hunting individual deer and let them tell me where they live instead of a magazine article. He's teaching me because he's leaving signs. There are signs, there's clues, and I look at myself sometimes. I go on Instagram, I video myself when I'm in the woods, and I'm like, even though I'm videoing myself, my eyes are going 100 mile an hour like this because it's almost like a crime scene. There's clues everywhere, but you got to find them, and you got to see them. It's just, you can't be just like narrow-minded, tunnel vision. You're going to look at every little detail. If there's a crime scene, someone was killed here, I got to look. Here's a clue. Or here might be a hair here, and it's like when I go to the woods, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at everything. If I go shed hunting with people, are like, man, you seen before me? I said, because my head's going 100 mile an hour. I'm looking at everything. I'm looking just everything. And so I let the woods tell me, the deer tell me where to be, and that's how I've been probably the last 15 years. I just let the deer tell me what's going on in the woods, because there is a story to be told. And then if you hunt an individual deer, there's even more of a story, because it's just that individual animal that you can follow and track through the woods. But yeah, probably in my 20s, and I think I went backwards reading the magazine articles, because the deer I were hunting wasn't they weren't I wasn't hunting the deer that the guys writing the articles. They were hunting like a totally different scenario, different area. So yeah, probably in my 20s I started.
Something that we've talked about is sometimes we've discussed if these podcasts complicate things for, I guess, hunters that are trying to learn these things. And I think there is a lot of truth of just getting out there and learning it for yourself. And it's repetition, building that Rolodex, that mental whitetail Rolodex, getting reps in, and just starting drawing conclusions. And
I've talked to people that listen to podcasts and said, I'm a new hunter, but I listen to stuff, and then that was fuel for the fire. I applied that out in the woods, and it did help. So, but yeah, a lot of boots on the ground, but that's why I like giving like analogies, like put you in a scenario and you can kind of relate how I see things,
Mm-hmm.
So
I think to your point, Jake, those conversations we have, the content that at least that we're putting out, whether it's a podcast, YouTube video, whatever it is, they should just be sparking the thoughts and the questions. Like, it should be the catalyst in your mind that's saying, okay, well, is that happening on my piece? If it is, like, why? Or if it's not, then why not? Like, what's different? What variables am I not thinking about? So just so everyone listening or watching this, there are no shoebox answers, but what we're talking about should be a catalyst in your mind to get geared up and put you in that cognitive state about thinking, breaking that down like a crime scene. That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
I've never seen someone or heard anyone, compare a crime scene to scouting whitetails in the woods, but that's a great analogy.
Yeah, and I think it's how bad do you want it? Like when I was younger, it just speaks about yourself. I want a mature animal. I want it. You're going to do whatever it takes, within the rules and being legal. But if it happens to be studying maps or whatever, but I would ask myself questions, and I would either put cameras out or scout till I found out the answer, where maybe nowadays with podcasts and what's out there about public land and different types of hunting, you could probably have these questions that you might ask yourself, then you could research and find the answer. But it took me like the years of just I go in to follow a deer, why is he going this way? Why, you have all these questions that you need to figure out, but it's how bad do you want it?
Yep.
What are you willing to do?
Right.
If you have limitations on, I'm not gonna walk half a mile to get to there, well then you don't want it bad enough,
Yep.
It's just anything in general.
Agreed. We cut up, I guess it's after 8 o'clock here while we're recording this, and you and I cut up for about 3 or 4 hours, throughout the day at the trade show. And we've covered, we talked about just about everything under the sun, whitetail related. But one of the things that popped up that relates to what we're talking about now is how much time that you actually spend scouting, and how, you're typically scouting a hell of a lot more than your actual stand time. I don't want to say hunting, but stand time. And, whether that's, I guess, all season long, postseason, summer, in-season stuff, that's one thing that seems to be consistent with guys that are, in your shoes, killing deer on a consistent basis on their terms. And as you kind of look at your seasonal schedule, I mean, you're a busy guy, business owner, doing all kinds of another busy guy trying to be efficient with their time. So when you start to look at the whitetail calendar of 365 days, like where are you weighing that, or are you weighing your scouting priority? Like, is it postseason? Is it summertime stuff? Obviously in season. Like, where do those priorities fall, and how much time are you kind of allocating to, I guess, each part of the whitetail
Definitely postseason, whether it's right after the rut, rifle season. People don't want to rifle hunt. Sometimes, I want to go bow hunting. Take your rifle out, scout, and that's where you're going to find a sign for, and then while I'm rifle hunting, while I'm hiking, take your gun for a walk. That's what I say. I might not kill some, but you're looking at your maps, you're studying, you're trying new areas where a deer might be, want to hide. So then shed season, okay, I'll drop a couple pins. Okay, if I might only have 2-3 weekends of shed hunt, so I'm going to run in there, check these spots, and drop pins. And then summertime, maybe I'll run mineral licks. And then fall, start looking for scrapes. And lately, since I'm busy with my other business, I just kind of hunt, the rut, November, and then late season. Definitely, I like it. But you're not going to learn an area in 1 year. You might get lucky. I don't believe in luck, but you might find them big rubs and big scrapes, and that's a no-brainer. I'm going to hunt here. But for the most part, that's a small percentage. 10% of the time, it's not going to happen. It's rare, But then again, it's like I'm saying rare, but it's like that's why I like using analogies. Maybe you live in Iowa, and maybe you're going to go out and pull. Man, I found big rubs. What do you mean it's rare, John? I found them here. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's all depends on where you're hunting. But I think it takes. And I talked to guys today about. I rarely use lock-on stands because I feel like I'm always moving. The woods are always growing and changing every couple of years, but definitely it's an ongoing process. It's not like this year I'm going to study this area and this is where I'm going to hunt. You're going to learn about this area, and you're going to learn more next year. And I do so much scouting that I have different states. I have good spots, and I even send other people, go try this is a good spot, go here and this. But I don't spend much time now in a tree hunting. I spent 30 hours in a tree this year, and I shot 2 good deer. I shot 3 deer, 2 good buck, and I missed a good one. But it's not like I've been doing this for a long time, and these areas I've been in for 5 years. I got to know it to where the deer know it. And the morning I hunted, I kind of drove around to see where the hunters were, and that's another thing to talk about. Hunters, like I said, that's the variable that we don't know about. And okay, these guys are here, and I know kind of where they're going, and I'm going to go down in here. And I missed one, but it's just ongoing scouting. It just never ends. The woods are always changing, and at the end of the year, the deer kind of jockey for positions for next year. One deer dies, this one moves, this one got kicked out of here. It's just like it's never ending. The forest is growing, but you're going to keep refining that area. If it's a 2 square mile, 1 square mile, I'm talking about bigger, a smaller piece might be different, but I love the bigger land. It might, get to the point where it like without a map, because that's what deer don't have a map. Right. So, but, like I said, as I'm hunting, that's a form of scouting, but early season, October, do a little scouting, walking, cameras, November, late, rifle, and, shed hunting definitely. And as you're going through the woods, I just love walking in the woods. It's like you see something new. It just stimulates my brain where it's like, oh man, and it feels good. You get exercise, and you do it for so many years. You got all these spots, and it's like today Chad showed me a place on his phone. It's like, okay, I hunted a little bit to the west, and I scrolled to his phone. It was like right there. I was like, just looking at the top, it was like ingrained in my head. I'm like, yeah, right there. I didn't have to like, oh, where am I? I'm like, oh, I knew I was there. I remember these clear cuts. I remember all this, but
So you already walked where he was showing you?
It was probably like
it was a spot that Clint and I actually had marked, and we had some interest in. We wanted to scout it, and we drove the perimeter road around it because it's a kind of an isolated piece of public that's surrounded by private, but there's a couple access points. And Clint and I just ran out of time. But, and he had walked the same exact spot. Uh-huh. He had already been in there, and
But it's just boots on. I love hiking and love walking. So then I'm just storing all that in my memory bank. And after so many years, you got a handful of good spots. So I don't have to put that much time in the woods hunting.
Go ahead.
I guess I was going to ask, there's a lot of guys that want to kill big deer like right now. whether they're new hunters or Cameron. We'll bring Cameron into the conversation. So
He's shaking his head. Yes, over
Cameron's a relatively new bow hunter. 3 years. Has killed 3 bucks with his bow in 3 years.
That's good.
2 different states. The dude, he's a really good hunter, but he wants it now. But he wants it bad, and he's willing to put the work in. That's why he's had success. So, what would your advice be to someone who, is a relatively new hunter, whether that's, I guess, a relatively new archery hunter? What would your advice be to them? Because it does take time.
It does.
To break down a property, and especially if you're trying to hunt a specific deer, it's hard for anybody. It doesn't matter if it's going to be really hard if you're a new hunter, but it's hard for an experienced hunter to go in and dedicate their season to a deer. The odds are probably not in your favor, but I guess what would your advice be? To
if you're a new hunter getting into it, I think you gotta have a map. Back in the day, I had these big topo maps we laid out, but now you have your phone, you have access to a map, and if you're hunting public land, I think to myself, because it's instinct. When I go, I just start going. I go and I gravitate. Maybe I'm going to walk over here, but and only in the last couple of years, people ask me why. I didn't have to tell nobody why, but I look back and it's like, well, why am I going there? Okay, that's the least accessible place on a hunting, on a piece of public land, and a diverse type of habitat is a key. If there's a bigger piece of timber, woodlot, or whatever, square mile of national forest, state land, if you can get a bunch of stuff, a deer doesn't just need one thing. It needs a lot of different things in its habitat to survive, whether it's a fresh clear cut, maybe a CRP field, like a mature piece of timber. So when you look at your aerial photo, you want to see a bunch of different stuff going on, but not just straight,
monoculture,
green. Yeah, you don't want it, because not that the deer aren't going to come through there, but it needs a little bit of everything to survive. So you kind of find that, you kind of get away from people, then you get your boots on the ground and you go, just start hiking. A good time to hike is right when they start shedding their velvet, because they're going to start rubbing. You'll find some sign. Or, I tell people, if you're a new hunter and you're looking to go somewhere next year, take a weekend trip in March, April, and because them rubs are going to, that year that they made in November, the fall in April, you can visibly see them, but they're going to be a lot tougher to see come October, November, unless you're really keen on seeing that. They're going to be hard to find. So take a weekend and scout it. Maybe in the spring, if say you got a couple of buddies, you want to try a new area, it's like a diverse piece of habitat that is kind of away from hunters, and I would gravitate toward bigger tracts of land. That's just me, because the smaller you get, the more accessible, and so on and so forth. And that's another topic of when to hunt that area, but I try to gravitate toward bigger pieces, and it don't have to be rugged up and down stuff. There's land out there in every state that has vast pieces of land that so the basic thing you want is like limited access, so if you can get to where not many people are, so go in the spring, then you want to go back maybe in the fall one time, and don't just get in a tree. People would want to study topo maps in the past and this is where we're going to get, here's a funnel, I'm going to pinch them, like, oh, there's way more to the story than that. And if you, like we talked about, even you bump a deer, you know what that tells you? He's there, and he's not running to the next country. He lives there for a reason. So walk through the woods. Don't be afraid to walk through the woods. People are afraid to go in the fall and walk through the woods on public land. I run through the woods in the fall. I cover as much ground. I don't literally run, but for the most part, my eyes are going looking. If I'm in a new place, I just go and go and go and go. And it's like my head's going and I'm flying by, but I seen that rub. Okay, and we'll go, I jumped a deer here. And the whole time I'm looking at my map on my phone, and I'm putting all the pieces of a puzzle together. And then I'm going to, find my best place to hunt based on that. So, yeah, maybe in the fall, get out there. Even if you're going that week to hunt, say, hey, me and my buddy's got a week to hunt, go hike. Just go through the woods. Make noise, talk. I mean, not a lot of noise, but it's public land. So just do a big circle out and back. What do we see? And be confident in your spot. Don't just go hunt. This was the best spot I found. I hope I see a deer. No, I'm not hunting like that. know what's going on in that area. Don't hope that a deer's going to come by you. I did that when I was younger. I sit there, hope. I'm praying, hoping this deer's going to come. But no, not anymore. Like, I know the deer's going to be there in the daylight. Gravitate towards some cover, maybe scrape. So have a little bit of everything going on. But hike through the woods and see what's there. So what if everybody's like, yeah, don't walk in there, my spook. I was like, but I want to know what's there. I want to know what's over that next hill. So I'll just hike all through the woods. If you got 5 days to hunt, I'd rather hike 3 and hunt 2 than hunt all the whole time, But I mean, as a new hunter, I would just, do some springtime scouting. And like I said, you if you're going to go hunting in the fall and it's a new piece of land, and if you don't have time in the spring, go in the fall and just hike through it and then find your best spot, get up in a tree or whatever and hunt.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's probably the best advice I could give on like public land.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to make mistakes because you're going to make them.
Yeah, everybody makes mistakes.
Make sure you're learning from them.
How many miles do you put on your boots on a typical year?
Man, I wear my boots out every year. I used to buy rubber boots every year, and I got them every year, but I don't know. I used to keep track. Like, I was down in Ohio last weekend. I did 3 days, 4 days, probably 7 miles a day. And I went down there to hunt, but there wasn't enough meat on the bone. I went down to a rugged piece of land looking for mass. It was sparse. Dogs were running a deer, and I didn't have the deer I wanted to go. It wasn't like I didn't really hunt. I hunted a couple evenings, so that just shows you how I approach it. I don't go down, and I was going to shoot a doe, but I can't sit in a tree and just hope that a doe comes by, like in the middle of the woods. I hiked and I found a couple decent spots, and I hunted a couple evenings. But even through the fall, I'm hiking and checking cameras right up till the time I kill my deer. Like, it's always changing. Like this year, I had cameras. Greg Litzinger, he came up and hunted with us, and he hunted one spot, and it rained next day. I'm checking cameras, scouting places for him. And I got to him. I said, "Man, look what's on it. Let's just get in here." And he shot one, and
that was a whole saga of
a
short amount of time. Greg, I did a podcast with Greg a couple days ago, and he mentioned,
did he?
X amount of inches out of one tree. Can you break down that transcendent of a story, because it sounds pretty wild?
Yeah. So he was coming from New Jersey, and we had scouted the previous it was fall. So the previous February, we just took a piece in PA, piece of state land, and in February we went and hiked to put boots on the ground, but there wasn't that diverse habitat. It was just all big hardwoods with some laurel, and we hiked it, and I wasn't excited. So come fall, I told Greg, I said, let's skip out. I said, I got another area. I kind of know it. So I said, there's some good bucks. So I'm running cameras the whole time and scouting. I put him in a spot in the morning, and he seen some doe. And then the following day, it rained, so I sent him on a little steel hunt. He actually got within maybe 20 yards of a 130-incher. He couldn't get a shot at it. So while he was steel hunting, I checked some cameras. This is all state, national forest and public land. So I went and grabbed my cameras. 11 o'clock in the morning, I grabbed a camera, and I had a couple shooters. There was 2 cameras, one facing left, one facing right. It was a corner of a clear cut. It was like the northeast corner of a clear cut. The wind was out of southwest, so the wind was great. The deer were kind of satelliting that clear cut and looking for a hot doe, or there was a doe in heat. So I said, Greg, get in there, get right here. We were pumped, you find something like that. So he got up in a tree, and I didn't even go to another spot. I was kind of like still scouting when he was up in a tree hunting. I just love walking around, and he texted me, man, I got one. So he shot one in the spine. It was making a scrape, chasing a doe. So he dropped it right there in his track. So he texted me, and we're only 150 yards from a road. It's kind of an overlooked spot. So I parked. I hiked over there about 150 yards, and he was all pumped up. I was like, all right, yeah, cool. I said, let's get this deer out of here. I said, I'm going to get back in your tree because I know it's here, So we drug it out to the road, and he went up on a hill to call his wife or whatever and take a minute, and so the deer was laying along the road, and I walked back in to hunt. It was about an hour. I shot one, and it died with there about 40 yards using a ram cat. I mean, who would use anything else, you know what I mean? But they all fall in sight, you know. So he fell, and I walked out, and Greg's deer's still laying there, and he come back. He's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I shot one." He's like, "Get out!" So we went and got my deer. We got it right there. We drug it out to the road. So the next morning, I told my buddy, I said, "Get in this tree." I took him in there before daylight, and then he shot one maybe about noon. You know, so we shot 3 bucks out of that same tree. But another point is, on the other side of the road, there was a clear cut that was right along the road. Like if you drive up that road, you could see the clear cut on the opposite side of the road, which has cover in that for deer, and people gravitate toward that. There's a lot of hunters up there. But the side we were on, there was a little bit of timber, and this clear cut was back in 150 yards, so people didn't really see it. So I had cameras running in that clear cut, and you know what I had on there? Humans, you know. And so I had cameras on this clear cut. I had all kind of deer, so it was like a no-brainer. It was like, I'm known what the deer know, you know. These guys are hunting this side, so we're gonna hunt over here. So yeah, that was awesome. That was his first deer he got out of state in a while, and we had a hell of it was just awesome. So we're planning another trip. He's coming out the end of February. We're gonna scout, and we're gonna get on him again next year. So
Yeah, he was saying he shot a younger buck, and yours was. He said the hoof difference between the two was huge.
Mine was probably a 5, 6, maybe 7. Not just the hoof, but the whole leg was a lot. The girth of the leg all the way down to the hoof. But yeah, you could just, it was unmistakable, the size and the body. We hung them side by side, and it was a mature deer. The rack wasn't. It was probably maybe 140, but I mean for a browse buck mountain. But that's a good buck, but big body, you know. So that was a good time making memories, you know.
How are you using cameras? I mean, we've talked about scouting and everything else. You've mentioned cameras.
Yeah.
Do you have a specific strategy, or is
scrapes?
It
you know, everybody puts them on scrapes, but not so much anymore. Where I hunt on public land, there's not trails. It's just kind of more flat. You don't really. It's just they just kind of roam. Mm-hmm. So maybe I tend to put them on scrapes. You know, in the summer's mineral lick. Late season, maybe out of the wind, out of the conditions, and maybe some thermal cover to where maybe there's some food. But during the season, maybe rut, October, I kind of guess how the deer's going to travel. I mean, I like a head-on shot to see, like face on, see how the width and that, but then you only got like a tunnel vision of where you're aiming your camera. So I kind of, if I feel a deer's traveling maybe one direction, I kind of put it like a 45-degree angle to kind of catch shining back, you know, kind of broadside, and try to get maybe 50, 60 feet. But also try to put a couple cameras out, because you really don't. I mean, if you ever track deer in the snow, you're like, there's times I tracked deer in the snow last year, and I'm like following this deer. I'm like, I'd put, man, that's a nice little opening. I'd put my camera right there, watch this opening. He didn't even go there. He went over a log and around. I'm like, what? You know, so you don't know where the deer's going to go. So I try to, if you got enough cameras, aim one to the right. Sometimes I put them back to back, aim one this way, aim one that way, you know. But there's times I've checked a camera. I rely a lot on my cameras, and like, this one has nothing on it, and I check this one. Man, there's 4 deer on there. You know, you would let maybe go buy this camera, but I mean, that's the tradition. Rubs, not so much. I learned when I first started putting cameras out, some rubs are just like, I would find a cluster of rubs. Oh man, this buck's hanging out here. This is his spot. I'm going to get him on camera. And a handful of times, I put cameras, years ago, put cameras on them rubs. I never seen a deer again. So I feel like it's like that deer, he was just aggressive at that point in time. Maybe there's another buck, maybe he smelled another deer, and he was just mad, and he just rubbed a bunch of trees. That doesn't mean he's coming back there. That was just his mentality at that point in time. He was frustrated and angry, and he rubbed a bunch of trees. He wasn't, so it's not always marking anything. It's just how he felt at that point in time. And a lot of times I find rubs, it just kind of tells you the deer's in the area. It might not tell you that he's going to revisit that. You know, it's not like a signpost. It's just, you know, if you find a signpost, yeah, but mainly just kind of where the deer are going to travel, you know. But I kind of It's kind of on like a 45-degree angle, but I try to use 2 or 3 cameras in one little area that really, then you could pick up, if you just got the one camera, you might not pick it up. So,
One of the things that we run into in the big woods is you're running a lot of cameras. They're hard to manage. You're putting on miles in between, the kind of the focus areas that you have, or the areas that you're running cameras, and you can't check them all. So are you leaving a lot of cameras out for like longer time periods, or are you just, do you make it a point to go in and check cameras like on a two-week rotation? Like, I'm going to go check all my cameras every 2 weeks and do something like that? Or is it like, okay, if I'm in this area, I'm just going to go ahead and look at these cameras to see what's on there? Do you have any, like, a thought process?
I like during the rut, I'll check them more often.
Yeah, I
Catch
agree.
that fresh.
I agree.
Like me and Greg, I was running cameras, and I said, man, it's hot here. Let's get in. But, kind of I'll leave some cameras there and let them soak maybe. It might be a month. Through the summer, if I got mineral licks, it might be a month. But I think just more frequent. And some of them are, like you said, you might have 6 cameras, but it's going to take you all day to get to these 6 cameras. And and that's what I did. I was going way back in and knowing, like in the summer, knowing the areas. I just so many years in an area, I start putting, like, if you're a mineral lick, I start putting them closer to the road. I'm like, I ain't going away. You know what I mean? And if you know where deer's living, you can catch them near a road, But there are some that I have way off the beaten path that I'll let them go all summer. But anymore, if you're smart about it, for most part, you're not going to be in an area where there's no roads. I'm like you in some places you got, I'm sure, way off, and it's going to stay there all year. But if it's easy to get to, or if sometimes if it's a gated road, I'll take a bike. I'll go back there, take a backpack. I did some crazy stuff, just like, I'm like obsessed with it. Like, I do whatever it takes, I just taking minerals or way back, like sweating 80, 90 degrees. Like this year we went to Tennessee for the summer and we had a house down there, and I told old lady, I gotta stop in Ohio. I gotta put cameras on. She's like, what? He's like, I'm on vacation. I was like, nah, she's like, it's 94 degrees. I said, I know. I got to get these cameras out because I don't know when I'm coming back again. I stopped in Ohio. She went with her parents. I said, I'm just going to go to Ohio. Should you stay? And I was like, I might stay at camp for a night. But I was like, nah. I got there. It was hot and humid and muggy, and I hiked and put cameras like 95. I stopped at the local Walmart, bought a couple cameras and threw some batteries, and I went. But it's like, how bad do you want it?
Yeah.
No matter what, that's what it comes down to. You'll do whatever it takes, And then you have all that intel if you do it for so many years, and you got tons of info that you can rely on.
Something that I found funny, we were talking on the phone when you bought some cameras, and you're like, I drove out to Iowa to hang cameras, and he drove out, was it 12, 13 hours?
Yeah, it's a 12 hours.
Drove 12 hours straight out to Iowa to check cameras.
I drove 12 hours, put about 12 cameras out, and drove home 3 days, 12 hours out. I got there at dark, slept next day, put 12 cameras out, and drove back. And it's another thing that me and Chad talked about. I said, I want to know what's out there. I don't want to hope. I don't want to go out to Iowa and hope. Man, I hope I get a good deer. I hope for luck. I don't believe in none of that. It's like, I want to know what's on that property, and then I'm going to, do what it takes to kill it. But yeah, that's what I told my girlfriend. I said, I'm going to run out to Iowa real quick tomorrow and drop a couple cameras. I'll be back on Thursday.
Drive halfway across the country.
I said, EHD hit pretty good out there, so I don't know. You're not going to find me. And it really didn't pay off. I got there the day after Christmas when I went out there. They were out for 2 weeks, and I had maybe 130. I didn't have nothing I was really looking for, so I had to go back first 5 days of my trip. Went back to scouting. Find what I wanted. Mm-hmm. It was windy, and I took my muzzle loader, and I found, I narrowed it down after about 4 days of scouting to 3 places I wanted to hunt. And the first day I went with my muzzle loader, I was scouting / hunting, but I was scouting for a place to maybe stand hunt, evening hunt with my muzzle loader, or still hunt, or maybe a place that I could bow hunt. And I narrowed it down to 3 to 4 spots after 12 different spots, all them cameras. But and it makes sense. well, I don't know if it makes sense, but them cameras helped me. I eliminated these areas, so I had to go find new areas, or I would have to scout them when I got there, and then so I narrowed it down to 3 or 4 spots that I want to hunt as deer that I want to kill. And the first time I sat in a stand, I killed one, but and I just keep scouting, keep looking, and learning. That's but that's what I love to do. Hike. It's like, if I think there's something over that mountain or over the next mountain or the next mountain, guess what? I'm going over all 3 of them, and then I'm going to come back.
Right. No, to your point, as far as that, like putting those 12 cameras out and whether or not that made sense to you, it makes sense to us. When you leave those cameras out, whether you're getting pictures or not, you're still gathering data points in those areas. Like, if you're not getting pictures, okay, why aren't you getting pictures? Now, maybe the camera was pointed the wrong way or whatever, but in that moment, you decipher, like, hey, deer aren't here. I'm going to cross that off my list.
Yeah.
Move on to the next spot.
Yep.
And that's something that I've been guilty of, is like, you go into a spot and it looks good. Like, oh, this looks good. And you tell yourself, there's the buck I'm chasing or whatever you're looking for is there, when it's not really there. And you become emotionally attached, and I've wasted time going into spots like thinking, this is a good spot, this is where it's going to happen. And you go in there, nothing is telling you to go in there and hunt other than your mind saying it looks good. It doesn't really look good. You become emotionally attached. You go in there, waste time.
Yeah.
Well, to your point, like hanging those cameras there, not gathering any data, like it's telling you, cross that off the list and move on.
Yeah, move on.
Move on. Be efficient.
Yeah, and that's why I said I want to get out there and hunt so I can get back home and hunt different, so I can get on to the next place. But to me, it makes total sense. If I go out there blind, now what do? The person I am, I want to know what's there, so I have to go find that animal that I want to hunt. And it was tough this year. On a regular year that I hunt Iowa, I just wait till I watch the weather, and I get some snow, and I just go find his tracks. It's just like, then it's easy. But this year was warm, and there wasn't that. So it was a lot tougher. I was like, man, I'm going to have to really work to find an animal I hunt, but the track will tell you. A track in the snow tells you everything. It's like a no-brainer. It's like, that's black and white. That's the only time it is black and white. It's like, there's a snow, and I would just drive roads, get out, hike, do big circles, find a track. Okay, a deer lives here. And by that time of the year, late season, he's usually not rutting and traveling, so he's there. You could really narrow a deer down. I love the snow. It's just, even when I was younger, I'd get out before daylight, it snows, and I'd drive roads. I'd follow deer, and you would learn so much, things that I thought, and then you follow a deer, and it's like, no, that ain't right. This is what he's doing. But yeah, it's if you have time to get in an area where there's snow and track an animal, do it. You just learn so much by tracking them forward or backward. It's how they live, how they, stand and, look back, and what they do, where they bed. It's just like, man, and you'll never know everything. To me, it's like, you just got pieces of the puzzle. You don't even know. You just keep gathering. You're going to gather forever, So
When you cut those tracks in the snow, how far, like I guess if you're tracking them back to bed, how far are you going to kind of confirm? Like, you cut a track and then track him back to like security cover and say, okay, well, I think looking at my map, he's bedded here, or do you go back to find like a bed?
Usually I'll go back and find his bed. Usually that time of year in the winter, that ain't far. Sometimes you'll be following a doe, usually late November, early December. They might be still looking for a doe, maybe hitting a scrape, but it's mainly resting up from the main rut. So you don't have to go far back to find their bed, and you start. And I've got to know a few trackers from Maine that taught me stuff, because when I was younger, I would just pretty much chase deer. And I got to this guy, and he's like, I went tracking with him one day, and he showed me. We walked up on, like, I've chased deer for years. I went with him, and it was amazing. We walked up on this deer bedded, and I would have never thought, like, we ain't gonna get it. He took me right to him, but you can learn so much. And then last year, I actually tracked one, rifle hunting, and it was pretty crazy. He was on his living through archery season. He was living on this big open point, and so I went there in rifle season, snow on the ground, and he was bedded on that point, real open. But he knew rifle season was in. He couldn't live on that open point during rifle season, so he went down across the creek up into his beech brush and hemlocks, and it was almost like I was reading his mind. He went up his drainage, and he was looking for a particular spot to lay down, and to me, it wasn't his. He usually lived on the other hill through archery season. There were some blowdowns more open to where rifle season you could see, but knowing that it was rifle season, he crossed the creek. He didn't want to lay in them open blowdowns into some thicker cover, and it was almost like he went up his drainage and he looked at this one big hemlock. He walked up to it. It's almost like he was a little bit lost. He did like a little circle in 100. He was looking for one particular bed that he knew, but I knew it wasn't a bed that he'd been to often. He would have walked right to it. It was probably a year before, because it was only his second day of rifle season, that he utilized that bed when the pressure was on. And so he was like lost a little bit, and I bumped him out of his bed. He's probably a 135-inch, maybe 140-inch buck, and it was a typical. I took a picture of it. He had beech brush behind him, nice big flat spot, big oak right behind him, and he could see down to the creek. But it's wild just learning. I said, this deer doesn't bed here often. It just tells you so much about it if you really ask yourself why this is happening. Mm-hmm. So he went across the creek and he went up in them blowdowns on another hill, and he ran upstream along that hillside. And I follow him, and you got to watch following a deer. If he starts, you look at his tracks, he looks back, he knows you're tracking him. So I went so long that he didn't know I was tracking him. And and I have a problem, like guys that track deer up in Maine, and they look at the track, the weight of the deer, and they're going to shoot that deer because there's not many deer up there, so the next deer they see, that's it. So I have a problem. I'm trying to judge him. I want to judge his rack. I'm still a rack hunter, so and I've done it in the past. I've tracked deer, and it's 100. I don't want to shoot him, and I wouldn't get a shot. So this year I said, so that time I was following him. I said, the next deer I see, I'm shooting him. He's dead. This is him. I ain't seen another deer track. I seen this deer. I jumped him. So I went up the hollow along the hill, and he cut down the hill on a 45. I look down there, I see a deer scratching the ground, pawing the ground, eating. I see the head, rack moving. I dropped his ass, I'm like, yeah, I got that sucker. So I looked to the left. There was a deer standing there while this one was feeding, and that one just like bound. I'm like, all right. So I walked down to my deer. I'm like, that ain't a deer. I jumped back 500 yards. I'm like, what? There was like a 2-year-old. And I got back, went up the hill and got on the tracks. And the buck I was tracking was standing over to the left. I'm like, man, one time I thought I was on him. The only deer I seen, I shot the wrong deer. But that deer's still out there. I got him on camera this year. But just try like that for that instance. I mean, rifle season came, and he knows where he has to go for rifle season. A lot of guys are in the woods, and so it wasn't a place he was accustomed. It wasn't like his bedroom. It was like his buddy's bedroom. He ain't real familiar with where the clock is, where the light switch is, so he got to look around a little bit,
I like that.
So,
where we at on time here? We got something else for the folks in the future.
50 couple minutes.
You got anything else on? I guess the topics of
Jake, I could go on. I mean, I don't know where to start and stop. I mean, know the deer. Like know the deer, know what's going on in your area is pretty much like if people are looking for tips, know what's going on, whether it's cameras or scouting and reading maps. Know what's going on. Don't hope for a deer. Scout, hike, walk, ask yourself questions, listen to podcasts, and then once you got all these questions, you can maybe research and find, an answer to them to help you. But you can get into scent, you can get into wind, you can get into, it's like a never-ending deal.
It's really a wormhole, for sure.
It is definitely a wormhole.
If someone has a question, a specific question, can they reach out to you, and where would they reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, the Johnny Stewart. Look me up. Send me a message, I'll answer you. If you got something to talk about, like whitetails or something, good chance I'm gonna get back to you, Some people send me messages and So he'll direct me messages. Man, look at this one. I don't want to send too many people. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. It's like, man, I hope you get them. Did you find this? You looking for this? Well, this is here. And I was like, man, I want to help you find them. I don't care about, I just like, that's what I love, finding a mature deer and going after them, But yeah, send me a message. Maybe we could hash it out together, figure it out, try this area, just like I told Glenn, it's like a puzzle, maybe a 500-piece puzzle, and you only have a few pieces. And it's like I told Clint, my analogy is like, you don't know what the picture is on the box. You follow me? It's like you're trying to find out what the picture is, and you have like 5 pieces, and you're trying to get the rest of them pieces to see what the actual big picture is. Mm-hmm. It's like you don't know it. That's what hunting is, chasing these whitetails. You just have a few pieces, and you put them together, and you're trying to guess what that picture is because you don't. And then once you get so many pictures, you're like, I know what it is, and that's when you kill them. Like, I know what the big picture is, but it's a wormhole. We just keep going. And then I even took people hunting, new hunters, people that never hunted before. My girlfriend went hunting, and I'm like, okay, we're going to go down here. I said, what do you think? She looked at me like, what do you mean? You're the big whitetail hunter. I'm like, I don't know everything. I said, maybe you have an idea. And people do, like newcomers, like, there are people I took on. I'm like, all right, yeah, I don't know. And a lot of my hunting is, I hunt by myself because I guess people ain't dumb enough to follow me around and spend all the money to go hunting with me. But pretty much I'm a loner, and this is how I see things. So when I get with someone, I'm like, what do you think? Whether it's a new hunter, it's like, where would this deer? What do you think he's going to go? It's a lot of guesswork, Why are you asking me? Maybe you have a good idea. I don't know. And I asked her, you want to go down here? She said, I don't know. Well, what do you think? You know what I mean? Because I feel like I don't know. You don't know, and nobody knows. And the more people could put their input in, I don't, even if someone knew, it's like, man, that's what I think. Man, that's a good idea. Well, let's try it out. We'll see if it's right, So, yeah.
Perfect. Well, we really appreciate you coming after the show and sitting down with us and podcasting and talking about this. And pretty interesting story.
Oh, yeah, it's fun. Yeah, thanks for having me, Chad. Yeah, that's good.
All right, we'll wrap it up. We may have another podcast from Johnny in the near future. And when I say near future, probably like October. So keep your eye out. Subscribe to the podcast. Leave a review if you haven't done so already. And we'll call it quits. Call it a wrap.
Sounds good.